Hey guys, hope you're all keeping well. I'd just like to share some stuff with you that I've recently been pondering over and looking into. A couple of things. The first thing is actually in 1 Samuel, um, 1 Samuel 17 from verse 51, and I'm sure most people know the story of David and Goliath, how he took him down with a sling. I'm very aware that David fought bears and lions as a shepherd boy um, a little while before taking Goliath on. I believe as a shepherd boy, his relationship with God grew greatly, um, and I think he was isolated from his family to a great extent. And during that time, it became really united with God in a real powerful relationship. He's been termed by God as a man after God's own heart, and so we can learn a lot from David. Now, David, as he came against um, this Philistine giant Goliath, I don't believe David believed for a second that he could fail, because I think he'd seen God that many times um, triumph for him. He knew God had the victory. I don't think there was any doubt in David's mind. In fact, in my eyes, it was David that was a giant, not Goliath. Speaking obviously in faith, he was a giant man of faith, and he knew God would take him. But the area that really sort of always grabs me is this. So if I read from um, verse 51, it says, "He ran over, pulling Goliath's sword from its sheath. Dave used it to kill the giant and cut off his head." This is, of course, after his whirled the sling and the stones hit him on his head and dropped the giant to the floor. And David made sure and finished him off with his own sword. But then it says, when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they turned and ran. Then the Israelites gave a great shout of triumph and rushed after the Philistines, chasing them as far as Gath, and from the gates of Ekron the bodies of the dead and wounded Philistines were strewn all along the road from Shaaraim as far as Gath and Ekron. This was a mighty people. The Philistines weren't a race to be sort of taken lightly. They were a powerful army. And my question's always been is, why did they run? I know it says that they saw that their champion was dead, but they were a mighty army. Big standoff between Israel and Philistine just because they've killed one giant. Just one man's killed one giant caused them to run. And I've always pondered on this. And as I was pondering on it and praying into it the other day, I sort of wondered, and of course we can't know for sure, so it's kind of a bit of speculation here. But I wondered if the enemy saw the Philistines, the enemy saw that David had got the faith in God and that God had actually got the victory for him. But then they realised that Israel knew this as well, and they sort of thought, wow, the victory's here, and we don't stand a chance. And so the enemy ran. A kind of recognition of faith, if that makes sense, that they couple these things together, that David and Goliath, from a physical perspective, it's an impossible win for David. So it's a miraculous win, but it's all based on David trusting completely in God. And as them Philistines realise that David's given the example that the victory is in faith in God and complete trust in God, and the Philistines kind of realise that the Israelites are starting to catch on with this, and they think, wow, we haven't got a chance here, and so they make a run for it. Just a thought. But sort of leaving that there, if we have a little look at 2 Samuel 5 as well. Wait a second. So in 2 Samuel 5 from verse 17, I shall read. It says, when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king, they mobilized all their forces to capture him. But David was told they were coming and went into the stronghold. The Philistines arrived and spread out across the valley of Rephaim. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, Rephaim means giants. So it was in the valley of giants, which I think is quite significant. So, verse 9. So David asked the Lord, should I go out to fight the Philistines? So I think this is quite key. We need to know who we're meant to be battling, how we're meant to be standing off, how we're meant to be going, all them kind of things. The key is going to God and asking these questions. And he said, will you hand them over to me? The Lord replied, yes, go ahead. I will certainly give you the victory. So David went to Baal-perazim and defeated the Philistines there. The Lord has done it, David exclaimed. He burst through my enemies like a raging flood. So David turned the place Baal-perazim, which means the Lord who bursts through. The Philistines had abandoned their idols there, so David and the troops confiscated them. And so David kind of changed the place name to Baal-perazim. Verse 22 says, but after a while the Philistines returned again and spread across the valley of Rephaim, the valley of giants again. And once again David asked the Lord what to do. God said, do not attack them straight on, the Lord replied. Instead, circle around behind them, attack them from the balsam tree. When you hear a sound like marching feet on the top of the balsam trees, attack. That will be the signal that the Lord is moving ahead of you to strike down the Philistines. So David did what the Lord commanded, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. So I think it's quite significant that this is the Valley of Giants, and the Valley of Giants was renamed the name Baal-perazim, which means the Lord burst through, or the Lord's victory. I just found it really exciting to find these things out. That David who attacked and defeated the one giant, and then went after the Philistines, and in the same way, a similar battle came back. It came round again in the Valley of Giants. The Rephaim were known to be quite a large people, and there's quite a bit about them, but we won't go into it. But Baal-perazim, the Lord burst through, or the Lord gave victory over the giants. I think is an incredible revelation, and I do think part of the key with us battling, whether we're looking at the coronavirus or whether we're looking at fears or things in general that come against us, I think as we look at our giants, we realise that the victory is God's. Because that's what it is here. David again went and asked God, will you give me this victory? Should I do this? How should I do this? And I think that's important for us. As we do, God, how do we do this? How do we respond in this situation? Like we're instructed to stay home. We're instructed to look after one another. We're instructed to pray for one another. And we can see a lot of positive things. It's fantastic to see so many areas of people praying. I've seen the NHS areas in this country, nurses and doctors praying together. Well, it's only a few months ago that that we weren't allowed to say Merry Christmas in these areas, but now people are praying to God. It's incredible that in such a difficult circumstance, God begins to turn it round for good, and we start seeing faith released. We start seeing people turning to God. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But I think the main thing in all this is God's got the victory. God's already won this. He told them to wait and to attack them in a certain place. The Valley of Giants turned and was renamed the Land of Victory. And I think that's an amazing prophetic insight in itself, that we can declare the Valley of our Giants, Valley of our Rephaim, if that's how you pronounce it, the Valley of Victory, or burst through. Amazing. Thanks for listening. Speak again soon. Bye for now. Bless.